Afternoon, YouTube. Working on a 2013 Tiger Explorer 1200 doing the fork seals. I'm going to do fork seals on one side. You can see it's leaking right here, leaking down. So I'm going to show you the tools you need. You're going to need a 5mm and a 6mm hex. You're going to need a, where are you? You're going to need a 13mm and a 14mm. You're going to need a star tip. This is a T30 star tip for some of the parts. So you got to take apart. First thing you're going to do is put it up on its center stand. Take the wheel out, and you need the this bit on your impact driver or impact wrench. 17mm to take out the axle. Okay, you pull it out this side. These are 5mm. We take out these bolts on that side right here. These are 5mm. You're gonna separate this off this hang down bracket. You're gonna take out the this is the star right here. Oops. This is the star. This is your ABS sensor, the magnet for the ABS sensor. So that's your star, the T30. Your brakes are going to be 14mm right here, and then if you have one of these axle blocks, that is 13mm. So now I'm going to take out the the fork. These are T6, or rather 6mm right here. There's two down there, and there's one up top. So I've already loosened them up, and I'm going to pull it out right now. Okay, so we have the fork apart, and it was not easy. This is definitely more complicated than some of the other forks out there. So what we have here is this is the lower fork, and the dust cover and the oil seal sit on that. We're putting on the dust cover right now, and then the oil seal will slide down on there. You have, this is the assembly that goes into the bottom. This is the assembly that goes into the bottom. This is connected to the top of the fork by this unit. You need a fork compressor. You need this thing. You have to put this on the spring. Then you have to get that piece in there to keep the spring compressed. And then you have to remove this top piece from the bottom, and that's a 17 negative. No, it's a 16. Where are you? They're hidden here somewhere. 16 and 14mm. The nut, 14mm. The top piece is a 16, and you spin them off. They're locked into place on each other. Then you can take this whole. Then you can take the spring out that holds the main spring in. You can take that out, and then you have to remove this. This is a 6mm hex. This is in the bottom. This is down in here, right down in there. You remove that, and then this whole unit comes out. Then you can take the forks apart. There's a C-clip right here that sits in this groove right here. You have to pull that out by compressing the forks all the way, and you pull it out from the top. And then there's a washer that sits between the dust cover, the oil seal, and then this washer. So that's everything so far. We're going to start putting it back together again now. Okay, in reverse, we have put in the dust shield, or rather the oil seal. The dust shield is up here, which is going to go back down. We had to put this. We had to seat this. You use these drivers It's a 46 millimeter. So use the 46 millimeter drivers. You put them into this, and then you bang that in there till you get that ridge in there for the C clamp. And then you put the clamp. I don't know if you can see the clamp. You can see pieces of it. Put the clamp back in. Then we're going to bring this back down. There is a C clip that goes on the top end. We've already done that. You bring the and maybe you can see it. No, you can't see the edge of it. No, it's impossible to see it. Anyhow, you bring it all the way up like it is, and then you put that clamp. There's a recess. You put the clamp in there. That holds the whole thing together. Now we're going to put the dust seal all the way around. And we are seated. And the next step is reassembly of the springs and everything, and then adding the fluid. I'll come back. Assembly, the bottom spring assembly is in, and there's a 6 millimeter hex. You see it down in there. That's back on. That's 25 Newton meters. We just did it with the impact driver on its lowest setting. You can't torque it because the piece just spins around in there. Okay, so the next part is, so we have this in there, it's locked in. Now we're going to put in the spring, and then we're going to put in the oil. Okay, next step, you have to get the spring back on. There's a little hole. You can see, yes, you can see that hole right there. You put a pick in that hole, and you can pull the center span up, and I can depress, or you can depress. You need two people to do this. One person's going to have to hold the span up, and the other person depresses the spring compressor, so you can get out and put this block back on to hold the center piece in place. And then we're going to put this piece. This is the top head of the whole fork assembly. We're going to put that back on there. And then the last part is filling the oil in there. Assembly. You're going to put the head of the fork down onto the bolt on that center span. And then you bring the spring all the way up till it sits on it, just like that. And this tool, now we can remove this tool, and then we're going to feed the oil down in here.
And not able without using that keyway to
that keyway to hold the span. You pull the span up through all of this, and then you start threading on the top. But there's no way to do it without that. There's a little hole in the center span.
in the shaft towards the top.
The shaft. You bring it up, and then you start this threading on the top. Okay, we're going to put in 645 milliliters, I believe. Let me double check that. It's supposed to take 664 milliliters. Oil volume, dry fill, suspension. Okay. So I already put in 500 milliliters. We're putting in 160 more, just to be off by a little bit. There's going to be a little bit in there left over, even though we cleaned it out. So we'll have 660 milliliters added. And you just pour it in, just like that. Okay, then you screw the top head back on, 22 millimeter. Put it on by hand till you get it threaded a few times, because this is all aluminum. And then just use your impact driver or impact wrench at its lowest setting just to cinch it up. There's a rubber gasket in there that'll keep it all together. So now we have it fully assembled. You have the upper spring, you have that spring block here, you have that upper nut on that center bolt, that bolt that goes down the entire shaft. And then you have this top assembly that screws onto that. Here you have a C clamp in here that holds it. Well, actually, it's up around here somewhere. That holds the two together. You have your oil seal, your dust seal, and then you have that 6mm hex on the bottom that holds the lower assembly and the lower spring together. So it's all together now. The next thing to do is put some rags on the floor so that you don't scratch up the bottom of your forks. And you're gonna push the fork up and down with all your weight about 10 to 20 times just to get the oil equalized inside there. Okay, bike is all together. This took me a few days to finish this last part. This is final thoughts on doing the forks on the Tiger 1200, Tiger Explorer 1200. Getting them in and out is very easy. You only have these 3 bolts here. Putting them back in is pretty easy, and then reassembling everything with the calipers and everything is pretty straightforward and pretty easy. You will need 2 people to do most of the assembling and reassembly and disassembly of the fork when you have it out. It's not, I mean, you could do it by yourself, but I would not suggest it. It would definitely be difficult and stressful and aggravating. And you probably have a tendency that you might break something. You might bend one of the washers or chip. It's, you know, these tubes are aluminum, and they're not hard aluminum. They're easy to. This one actually had a chip on the lip that I had to sand down. And I don't know if I did it or was done when the last time it had the forks done. I just don't know. I just noticed it after I was putting it back together again. I think it was there already, but they're easy to chip and damage, so you have to be careful. So that's about it. Total time was about, I want to say probably 3 hours, but we ran into some difficulties. So probably normally it would take maybe 2 hours. That's fully disassembling, taking it off the bike, taking it apart, cleaning everything up, putting it back together again, adding the fluid, putting it and putting it back on the bike. It should take probably about 2 hours. It took us 3 because I didn't realize there was that C clamp up here in the top of the tube, because it had double. It had a C clamp in the bottom holding the oil seal in there, and then it had a C clamp up here on the top of the inner tube, the lower tube. So that added some problems to it. And you will not find directions online. There's no service manuals for this year. I found service manuals for 2016 and up, and that fork assembly is different than this fork assembly. So that's it. Any questions, leave them in the comments. Mike Machines out.